Hey YouTube! So, this is part 2 to episode 12. This time it's a little bit more structured. I actually googled like questions to ask a blind person. So I have 49 subscribers. Thank you to my newest subscriber, by the way. I don't remember your name. It was like Allie or Allison or something. Anyway, so, but thank you, 49th subscriber, and to my 48 other subscribers. But, so instead of like asking, because I wasn't sure how many people would respond, I decided to just Google it because, you know, there were actually a lot of things that came up, like, you know, the 5 questions you've always wanted to ask a blind person, or 21 questions you've always wanted to ask a blind person, or frequently asked questions on the websites to blind organizations. So it was definitely not hard to find. I decided to get the questions so that I could have a little bit more structure to this video as opposed to the last one wherein I just rambled, and my last 12 other videos wherein I just ramble. Before I continue though, my background today is Mayday Parade on Shuffle. I haven't listened to them in quite some time. Haven't used them as my background rather in quite some time. I thought about continuing with Hamilton, but I figured since I'm going to try to, you know, make this seem not so rambly, you know, excluding this beginning part, of course. But since I have, like, you know, it's kind of structured, I don't want to constantly get distracted by Hamilton, as I know I will. And, yeah. So, also, heads up, my nose is a little stuffy. I was sick the past few days. It was not fun. There was, like, coughing and sneezing and all of that good stuff. So just, like, you know, I sound stuffy, or certain things I say sound more stuffy than others. Okay, so I want to start off with a little anecdote, so 2 short anecdotes. So, one happened before I got to my class, and one happened as I was leaving. So I was heading to my vampire lore class. The Vampire Lore and Literature is its full title. So I was heading to vampire lore, and there was this like group of girls just kind of spanning the hallway, and I was trying to figure out the best way. Or, well, they were just like kids. They're just students everywhere. So I like tried to get around them, but there's just so many people, and I kind of started to walk into them, and they kind of scattered, and they're like, oh my god, like they erupted into giggles, and they're to themselves, or to each other, they're like, oh, I never look where I'm going, blah, blah, and it's like hilarious, like there's giggling, and I'm just like, why is it so funny? Like, it was an accident. Maybe it's awkward laughter, and maybe I'm just being a jerk by like commenting on it and stuff like that, but you know, it's just like, why was all of that necessary? And then, kind of related to that, when I was leaving Vampire Lore to go home, I was walking and I was looking for a garbage can. I was holding an empty cup. I had hot chocolate in it, and there were so many people, so I wasn't sure if I'd find it or not, if I just had to ask someone where the nearest garbage can was. But then I hit it with my cane, and it has kind of like a distinct sound. The sound of a cane hitting a garbage can. Kind of like, just like, you know, if you tap a spoon on a glass, like, you know that it's probably a spoon being tapped on a glass. Like, you know, it just has a distinct sound. So there were like some kids standing around. I say kids, but we're all like 18 and up, or 17 and up. But anyway, you know, like a group of students standing around, and I was like, you know, excuse me, is this a garbage can? And they were like, you know, they were like all laughing and stuff like that. I wouldn't say giggling, but it was pretty close. They were like men or whatever. And after a couple of seconds, they were like, yeah, that's the garbage can. And they continued. Like, I didn't get what was so funny, and I didn't care enough to ask because I just wanted to go home because I was tired and hungry. So, yeah, I was just, like, the awkward laughter, sometimes I feel like it's totally unnecessary. Sorry, I'm, like, scratching my ear and stuff. Okay, so before I get into the questions, I want to shout out to my friend Melissa for helping me finally, like, figure out and get, like, a working camera situation. She might kill me if I go another video without giving her credit, so thank you, darling. Alright, so one of the first questions I found was, do you love Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles? Well, first of all, everyone always leaves out Andrea Bocelli. Like, he's cool too, the opera singer. But, so, I don't like them any more than any other person. Like, I definitely have these moments where, isn't she lovely, is like stuck in my head, and I go and look up the lyrics, and I'm like, I should totally cover this, and then I'm like, nah, I won't. I don't, like, it's a great song, I don't want to mess it up. I'll definitely get around to covering it. I don't really know any Ray Charles songs, but, like, I chuckle in songs like She Will by Lil Wayne when he's like, you know, I'm Ray Charles to the bullshit. Like, you know, I can appreciate those jokes. Does that mean that I, like, love them? Not necessarily. I don't not love them. They're just artists, you know? It's not because they're blind artists. I definitely do, like Stevie Wonder more than Ray Charles. Not for any particular reason. I've just never really looked into Ray Charles. There was one time in a yoga class I was taking, I was not a fan of that class. But anyway, so there was one time in a yoga class I was taking, I was singing along to something, and someone's like, oh, you sang? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, oh, so you like Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder? And I was like, I guess. Like, the correlation made no sense to me. I think she also asked if I played piano, and at that time I did. I've now ditched it for guitar, but, you know, yeah, just going with the stereotypes. Another question was, why don't you wear sunglasses? It was on the 11 worst questions to ask a blind person, which is one of the many links I'm going to put into the description, because I was definitely tickled by the questions. And so I personally, I can see a little of one eye, so I will wear sunglasses, especially since I have glaucoma, which makes my eyes light sensitive. But I actually don't like sunglasses because it's hard for me to see through them, ironically, right? But, you know, since it makes the world dimmer, so the sunlight isn't as bright and glaring and eye-piercing, you know, but then it consequently, like, makes it harder for me to notice, like, really major contrast, or no, it makes it easier for me to notice major contrast things, or, like, just random, like, that giant pole, but it's harder for me to notice the smaller things that I would see without it. So I generally don't wear sunglasses unless I'm walking with someone else, like someone's guiding me. Then I'll wear the sunglasses and protect my eyeballs, which probably isn't a good thing, but I definitely feel really awkward with them on, and then it takes a long time once I get inside and take them off for my eyes to adjust. It's weird. Like, it takes longer for my eyes to adjust after I've taken off sunglasses than when I go inside from, like, glaring light to, like, the dimmer inside light. Like, my eyes adjust, or sometimes they don't even need to adjust. And so I mentioned guiding, which leads to the next question. What is the proper way to guide someone who's blind? And, so it's hard for me to show. I need, like, another person. But basically, like, the blind person holds your elbow, like, they cup your elbow like a glass of water. And generally, you bend your elbow, and then it makes it easier. It makes it easier for the blind person to navigate in the space. Like, if you just walk up to someone and you just grab them, you grab their arm, and you start leading them, it makes it harder for them to have, like, you're in total control. But if the person is holding your arm, like, you have the control in terms of you're guiding them, but we can, like, let go. It's easy for the person who's guiding, the human guide, the sighted guide, to put their arm behind them. So if you put your arm behind you a little, then that signals to the blind person or the person that's guiding, because blind people guide blind people, or visually impaired people guide visually impaired or other blind people. But if you put your arm slightly behind you, it indicates that, you know, you have to move back a little, like, it's a small space, and you have to like go behind the person a little, which, you know, so it's just like, for maneuverability, it's a lot easier and it's more convenient, and it's arguably safer for the blind person than if you're just totally in control. And then, like, if you're behind the person and you're guiding them and you're like, oh, step down, it might be like startling if it's just like the step is right there. So, you know, and well, I would hope the person is using their cane, but still, like, it might be startling and the person might trip and fall. But if you're guiding the person, they'll feel you take the step, and then they'll know to take the step behind you. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I ask that as though you guys can respond to me. But you can Google it, like, sighted guide, or, you know, S-I-G-H-T-E-D, not sighted, S-I-D-E-D, or human guide. What can you see? So I kind of answered this in that vlog video I did that was like 38 minutes long. That was episode 11. Yeah, let's go with that. But I'll answer it briefly again, so I can see a little of one eye, I can see colors, shapes, I can see contrasting things. It's hard to answer. People ask me, like, can you see shadows? And I guess it makes sense. Someone commented on one of my videos, and I guess it makes sense, like, if we see shadow, so I've always, like, joked, and, like, if I saw shadows, like, I would not want to see that. That sounds like some paranormal activity action happening there, and that does not sound appealing. But I guess, you know, like, if you only see the shadows that things cast, but I feel like you would then have to see light to know that it's a shadow. So I can see lights and shadows and colors, and I can see only out of one eye. There are people, like, with who are visually impaired who can see out of both eyes, like, you know, people who wear glasses, if they take off their glasses, they're usually probably visually impaired or legally blind, maybe. Do blind people blink? Yes. So I'm majoring in psychology and creative writing, and, you know, psychology isn't necessarily this biological part, and creative writing certainly has nothing to do with that. But, but, you know, yes, we blink. I think people with prosthetic eyes, I don't know if they blink. They probably don't. They don't have to. But, you know, when you blink, like, I'm pretty sure it has to do with keeping your eyes clean, like keeping dust out, making sure it waters, making sure your eye waters so that, you know, they stay clean. Again, I don't know exactly, like, the total like, I know sometimes when you blink, like, you blink things out of your eyes, but I don't know why we, like, blink ordinarily, just regularly. Do we blink 182 times a minute, or am I just thinking about the band Blink-182? That, it sounds right. But anyway, so it's like, it's a biological thing. Like, you don't, it's not like a sighted thing, or though I guess to an extent it is. Like, if you stare at a light bulb, like, your eyes might start to water and you'll blink the water out. So I don't know. Yes, blind people blink. Do you dream with sight? So again, I can see a little, so this question does not necessarily apply to me. I dream what I can see, and that's how it is for other, like, fully blind people, though. However they perceive the world is how they then dream it. Like, if they can only hear and touch, well, then that's what'll happen in their dreams. Like, it doesn't differ. Like, if there's nothing, if you can't see anything, then how will you be able to see in your dreams? Like, you'll have nothing to base it upon. I don't know about people who have gone blind later in life. Like, they might still dream in like, visually and in color. Because someone else, this is a question that I've seen and I've heard people say, they've asked, like, do you dream in color? Well, if you're colorblind, then you wouldn't dream in color. And if you can see color, then you would dream in color. If you're fully blind, then again, you dream however you perceive the world. How do you go on the internet? So, again, in that 38-minute long video, I talk about this. Like, I use voiceover, I use screen readers. Basically, what they sound like, they read the screen. And I won't go into that because, again, I rambled for 38 minutes about that. How do you type? That I did not touch on in my video, and I just have the keyboard memorized. It's something that I learned when I was younger, and it's actually, I've been, you know, like, a good skill for most sighted people to have, or not most, but sighted people to have too, because, like, a lot of people get caught up in looking at the keys and making sure, like, and it might slow your typing speed down than if you can just type it without looking, you know, if you can just type it, if you can type it pretty much without thought. And then to orient myself, you know, there are, like, the little ridge on the F and J keys, and then, you know, then you just know so the home keys are A, S, D, F, and then J, K, L, semicolon. And then, you know, it's easy to memorize. A, S, D, F, G, H, J, K, L, semicolon. The bottom row is Z, or the row below that is Z, X, C, V, B, N, M. Is it comma period or period? I think it's comma period. And then the row above ASDF is Q, W, E, R, T, Y, U, I, O, P. I think that's right. And, you know, I was definitely visualizing it. But I'm like a pretty visual blind person, or visually impaired person. Like, I feel like I almost have a photographic memory. It's easy for me to remember things, and then I can, you know, after I get the hang of it, visually remember things. I then consequently, like, I can visually map it in my mind. Okay. Are people condescending to you? Oh, yeah, totally. People think that I have limited, I guess, capabilities. Like, people who talk to me very slowly as though I have a comprehension problem or a mental disability. And I touched on this in the previous video, the previous part of this episode. But I mean, so I definitely have condescending tendencies as well. Like, in terms of like intellect, I definitely can be condescending. I don't always intend it to be, but sometimes my tone comes off sounding that way, so I definitely recognize it in others. And people, you know, like, the way just people talk about me, talk to me, there are a lot of people I've noticed with my close friends, or even, not even totally close, like, best friends whom we tell each other everything, but just, like, closer friends, friends whom I talk to regularly, whom I regularly hang out with in school. Like, we're pretty okay with each other. But I have had friends, or I guess they count more as acquaintances, who have, you know, they'd be laughing and joking with their friends, calling each other, like, bitch, and things like that, and, you know, and they see me and they'd be like, oh, hi, Lily, how are you today? Like, their whole demeanor will change. Their well, I don't know if their physical demeanor changes, but their, like, verbal demeanor changes, and it's so obvious to tell. And I guess this might also come into play, but, like, servers and waitresses / waiters in restaurants, or just people in general, if I'm walking with someone, they'll ask the other person. So if I'm with my mom or sister, oh, I love this song, sorry. If I'm with my mom or sister, they'll ask them, or, like, okay, so back to the servers. In a restaurant, they'll say, you know, what is she having? And, ordinarily, like, generally, I'll respond to them, and then some people, they'll then realize, like, oh, okay, she can talk for herself, and they'll consequently can then, you know, talk to me about my order. And then some people, like, I'll respond, and they'll keep on talking to the person I'm with, both in terms of servers and people that I'm with on the street. And sometimes I never make a big deal out of it. Like, I just continue responding to the person. But I have had friends who have been like, you know, she's standing right there, she can hear you. And then the person gets all flustered and yada, yada, yada. Like, people make it out to be such a big divide, and there really shouldn't be. Like, certain things, yes, like, you might have to touch the blind person's arm. Like, if it's the person that's just standing by themselves, you might have to touch their arm so that they know that you're talking to them. But, it shouldn't be as big a deal as people make it out to be, you know? If you saw two people walking, like, you wouldn't just start talking to the other person and ask about their companion. Like, so why is it any different for a blind person, you know? Do you read the dots? Or Braille, depending on how much knowledge the person has. I read Braille. I read 180 words a minute. There's now a new Braille code, UEB, the Universal English Braille Code, that's changed. So some things have gone away. I think I covered this in my really long video as well. Some things have gone away. Some contractions beyond, like, your, which is, you know, Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. So in Braille, that'd be Y apostrophe R-E, because U is the contraction for, like, Y, rather, is a contraction for you, and we had 189 of those to kind of condense Braille a little more, because we can't enlarge it or make it any smaller, so with the contractions, that's the best way we have. But anyway, yes, I do read Braille. Not all blind people read Braille, though, because assistive technology is, like, really prevalent, and people argue that it's more beneficial. Like, I think it's always good to be able to read Braille. It's the equivalent to, you know, sighted people being able to read print. Like, reading is always important. And don't get me wrong, like, some people have learned Braille later in life, and even if they're not good at it, like, at least you can you can get through it. Because audio technology is great, but, you know, I feel like you should still have something else to fall back on. I like being able to read physical Braille books, so I rarely do anymore, but it's nice whenever I'm in a Braille library. Yes, those do exist, guys. They're few and far between, but they do exist. Blind people and sex. So this was a pretty big thing, and I saw that this question recurred a lot. I can feel my face getting red. When I saw that this question was a recurring question, I then Googled blind people and sex, and there's a lot of things that have come up. Some of the common questions I've seen were, how do blind people have sex? How do blind people discover their sexual orientation? Do blind people who have been blind since birth have a sexuality? How does it feel to have sex as a blind person? And then there was like this one forum where someone was like, has anyone ever had sex with a blind or deaf person? I don't get why it's such like a big deal. And also, I feel like it's kind of rude to just go up to a blind person and ask them, like, how do you have sex? Or to ask their partner, like, how is it having sex with a blind person? Because, again, like, it's pretty personal. And even if you're okay with talking about sex, like, you're perfectly, like, open to it, it's still kind of like, especially if you're a stranger and you just come up to the person and ask them that, like, that's not okay. But, so, how do blind people have sex? Well, you know, like, growing up with sex ed and stuff like that, well, unless, you know, you're totally sheltered, then you might not, well, in this day and age, like, few people, it's hard to be sheltered, blind person or otherwise. But, you know, like, everybody knows where, everything goes, how the genitalia fit together, and, you know, people, like, you know, the other four senses come into play when intimate with someone, you know, so it doesn't, someone responded by saying, on one of the many forums that I found, by saying, you know, like, you might have to be a little bit more, verbal with the blind person than you might with a sighted person. But, you know, like, the other four senses come into play whether you're sighted or blind. There are people who have sex in the dark. So, you know, that's not, it's not totally different. What do you do then? And then, you know, how do blind people discover their sexual orientation? How the hell do you discover your sexual orientation? Sorry, I didn't mean to kind of, like, have it come off as that. But, you know, like, I guess you have experiences, like, you learn if you're not attracted to women, then I guess you try men, and vice versa, like, for whatever the gender is. Like, you just learn. You might you might have, like, preconceived ideas from, maybe, I don't know, if you, like, read erotica, then you might have preconceived ideas like, oh, maybe I might be attracted to this gender because that sounds more appealing. I don't know. But, you know, and then also, do blind people have blind people who've been blind since birth have a sexuality? Why wouldn't they have a sexuality? Like, the only thing is that they can't see. Someone commented, you know, like, on one of these many forums about blind people and sex. Like, they were like, you know, one of the things was, how do blind people know that they're attracted to someone? How do you know you're attracted to someone? Like, you have a certain set of, like, characteristics and physical body types, physical body characteristics, there we go, you know, that interest you, and a blind person might have, like, a specific, I don't know, like, vocal quality that interests them, or a specific type of personality type. And there was one person, I thought this, I don't know how I wouldn't say, so a lot of people said this was, like, so sweet, and I don't know if it was sweet per se, but it was an interesting statement. They're like, you know, obviously they do a lot with touch. This was someone who was fully blind, and they were saying how they don't understand how something that is so appealing to the touch. So someone who's curvy, like this was a man, so a curvy woman is like, they don't understand how this is unappealing visually, like why there are people who don't like people on the curvier side of things, because again, they're like, it's so appealing to the touch. So, you just use the other senses to figure out, I guess, how you like people. And there are a lot of like blind people who are, I guess, creeps to be the best, is the best way to phrase that, who like touch people's chests or butts, and they claim like it was an accident. Sometimes it might have been, and sometimes it might not have been. One of my friends who's fully blind, speaking of which, my friend who's fully blind, he's almost 21, and his girlfriend, I think she might be 22 or 21. They have a 3-year-old daughter, so they definitely knew about sex. One's fully blind, and the other one, I think she's colorblind, and she's visually impaired, so she definitely uses a cane. I think she reads Braille. But anyway, so, but he has some sort of method to know, like, to get an idea of a female's body type, if she's on the curvier side of things, if she's thin. I don't know what it is. He hasn't told me. But, everyone comes up with methods. I saw part of the Ray Charles movie, and I know he, like, felt a woman's wrist. I'm not quite sure how that worked out. I guess it was, like, a thicker wrist versus a thinner wrist, and, whatever. But yeah, so, like, sexuality and blind people, like, there doesn't have to be such a huge divide. There are, tactile 3D genitalia, like, books, and, like, when I was younger, like, learning about sex and stuff, or just even, like, just general science books. Like, there are tactile photographs for blind people to feel, so, they're tactile reproductive organs, and I'm sure there are, like, 3D, lifelike, like a dildo. I sounded really excited. But like that, like, you'd know what a penis feels like, and there are pocket vaginas, which when I discovered that, I was shocked, tickled, entertained. I don't know. I was something. And, so you can feel around and get to know things that way, There's not much more to say about that, I guess, so, yeah. So, hardest part about being blind. Do you feel you miss out on things? Driving. I can't drive. So, I live in New York City, if anyone, like, no one's figured that out. I don't know if I've mentioned it, but I live in New York City. And when there are concerts in places like Long Island, like, really? Why are you having a concert in Long Island? It's not New York City. It's, like, just on the outskirts, and it's so inconvenient for me to get to. Like, yes, there's the the LIRR, Long Island Railroad. But it sometimes doesn't stop at, like, the prime places, so then, like, I usually don't have someone to drive me, and I'm not going to take the LIR, the LIR, and go through that trouble, and then have, what's the words I'm looking for? Oh, and then, have to, like, pay for a cab. Like, it's so much work. I wish I could drive. Everything else, honestly, like, I find workarounds. Like, I can't just go outside and start running, but I can find someone to run with me, and then that could be, like, made fun. And, again, generally, I just find workarounds. And, do I feel I'm missing out on things? I mean, yes, in terms of, like, if something happens, like, I don't know, if a fight breaks out, like, obviously, people are going to be, like, reacting, and I won't know what's going on initially, but someone will tell me, like, I'll figure it out, so it's not even like I miss out for long. And I have friends who are super descriptive, and I love their descriptions, so, that works in my favor as well. This is approaching half an hour. Oh, I thought I wouldn't do another long video, but okay, well, I'll keep going. How do you dress yourself? I can see a little, so I can match colors, but there are apps, like there's this app called TapTapSee, like for my band shirts. Some of them I can tell, like I know the one that has blue in it is my my Pierce the Veil shirt. I can tell my All Time Low shirt. This shirt, ooh, it's all like wrinkly. Sorry. This shirt, Sarcasm is one of the services I offer. So it's like, it's blue, and then it just has like the line of text. So, I know that that's this shirt, or I can take a picture with tap C and it'll tell me. I know I have fully blind friends who have like color identifying apps or just color identifying equipment. So, basically it tells you the colors, and if you're like at least slightly fashion savvy, you can like match things. If you have some people like FaceTime family members. Like I definitely have I FaceTime my sister to ask her what I should wear for this like photo thing I have to do this weekend, because I'm not one for dressing up, and I have no qualms like asking someone if I want to figure out an outfit. Like I had an idea of what I'd wear, but I just wanted to make sure that it seemed like it went well together. So, I FaceTimed her, I tried it on, so yeah. And I mean, I'm also one of those people who gotta just like pull things out, and they usually go together. So I'm self-conscious about some things, but not about others. A lot of people have asked me about medical marijuana. Why don't I do it? Can I have it? Why don't I try it? Have I tried it? Things to that effect. I have glaucoma, so yes, I can have medical marijuana, but it's never been something that appealed to me, smoking. I like the taste of alcohol, but drugs, alcohol is a drug, but like smoking just has never appealed to me. Like it doesn't smell good. I'm a teenager. I'm a modern teenager, so this isn't unusual. Like I have tried it in its edible form, and nothing really happened. And again, it doesn't appeal to me. My friends want me to smoke, but it's because they not necessarily like bad influence. They want me to smoke because they want to try it. They want to see how I react to it. And it's just not something that interests me, so it probably won't be something that I do. Can you fall asleep with your eyes open? This goes back to like the dreaming question, but I personally can't because I'll see the lights, and I've never tried falling asleep with my eyes open. I know there are some blind people that can, and I know it's a talent, it's a skill that I really wish I had. Like there are some sighted people that can. That's a skill that I really wish I had. How do you recognize people? By voice. And this is something that drives me crazy. So there are some people who, let's say I've met you once, you'll like automatically assume that I know your voice. So there are a lot of people who come up to me like, hey Lily, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And like I generally, sometimes I have no idea who you are for the entire conversation, or sometimes depending on what you ask me, what we talk about, like I'll figure it out. Some people, they're like, oh, hey Lily, it's, I don't know, like Mariah or Kayla, and it works perfectly. There are some people who know that I know their voice, and there are some people who kind of recognize my cues, they're like, they're like, hey, and I'm like, hey, and they're like, it's Jane. I'm like, oh, okay, hey. And I realize that it's awkward for some people. Like, I've had teachers who have been like, I don't know if I should say hi to you, because, like, I don't know if you'll recognize me. But, just say, like, hey, it's Miss whoever, or Mr. whomever, or just say, hey. And sometimes I do say, I'm sorry, this is really awkward, but I'm not sure who you are. But it's awkward on both ends, honestly. Like, I feel bad not knowing who you are, especially when they're so excited to see me. There's some people who just know voices no matter what. And there's some people who, like, I guess, like, audiographic memory, is that the right term? Like, a photographic memory with audio, like, their memory is like a recorder. Like, they just know all voices. Some people, I'll see them and I'll know their voice in a particular setting, but then I'll encounter them outside and they'll be like, hey, and I'm like, that voice is kind of familiar. And they'll be like, it's blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. You're just not in the right setting, so I don't associate you with that voice. How do you navigate the city, school, etc.? I have a cane, so I use my cane. I also use the bit of vision that I have. Yeah, I also, use the bit of vision that I have to navigate and things to that effect. I ask for help when I need it, and on that, I mentioned this before in the previous video and in other videos, but so people who come up to me and just grab me, and they're like, do you need help? And I'm like, I'm okay. Like, if I'm crossing a street, or no. Okay, so the traffic light is about to change, and like, oh, hey, you need help crossing the street? And they'll grab me, and they'll start walking with me. And sometimes I tense my arm, and I'm just like, I'm fine, thank you. And other times I'll just, like, let it go. It depends on how I feel that day, and how they approach me. Because, yes, some people, like, most people, they, like, grab your arm. And, but they just sound more pleasant than other people. I guess I judge, like, on voice sometimes. But, again, it's just one of those things, like, you have to pick your battles. And sometimes I don't think it's, like, totally worth it to argue, because people have argued with me. Like, do you need help crossing? No, I'm fine. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm fine. No, I'll help you. No, I'm okay. Thank you. No, I'll feel better, if I help you cross. Why the hell do I care if that makes you feel better? What about me? What about how I feel? This has happened more so on the train. Like, hey, do you want to sit? No, I'm okay. Thank you. Sit. No, I'm all right. Thank you. Sit. I'm okay, thank you. I'd feel better if you sat. Why does that make a difference for me? I was, like, just tapping my desk for the record. Like, is that necessary? Why is that relevant to my life? Again, what about how I feel? And, so just, like, these arguments that I have. Like, so today I was getting off of the train, and I was walking to the turnstile, and someone's like, hey, do you need help? And I'm like, no, I'm fine, thanks. And she's, I was like, oh, I'm alright, or I'm fine, or whatever, thanks. And she's like, I'm sure you are. I just wanted to ask. And I'm like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. Like, that is a perfectly plausible response. The only thing I would have said is that maybe she could have, like, touched my arm, because I kind of do guesswork. When people offer me assistance, I'm like, I'll respond, but I don't know if they're talking to me. Like, there could be, like, more than one blind person, and then it's awkward, like, hey, I'm not talking to you, and the other person is like, wait, you're not talking to me? Like, how do I know that you're talking to me? I hope this is making sense, because I'm starting to talk quickly and kind of rambling. I'm definitely going to need water soon, and, like, maybe some food, because this is approaching super long, like the last one. But, like, it's just, think about, you wouldn't do that to another sighted person. Like, you wouldn't just go around grabbing them. You wouldn't just grab that little old lady as you help her across the street. Like, the barrier is our vision, yes, but that's, like, the only, like, there's nothing else. Like, yes, you might have to adapt how you approach us, you might have to adapt certain things, but that's it. Like, there's not as great a divide as people seem to make it out to be. Today, I was crossing the street, and this guy was like, do you need, well, the first time I was crossing, he's like, you can cross now, and I was like, oh, thanks. I was playing with my phone, so I wasn't totally attentive, so if anything, I would have just waited until the next time the light was in my favor or whatever. I would have just, like, waited, because I'm okay with that, but he told me I can cross, and I was like, oh, thanks. And then we were walking along the avenue, and we got to the next crossing, and he's like, do you need help crossing this time? And I was like, no, I'm fine, if you can just tell me when I can cross, which I'll do sometimes, like, or, I'll tell you when I need the assistance, rather than you just grabbing me. And he told me when I could cross, and he takes my arm anyway, and he, like, helps me, like, because there was, like, a step at the curb, and so he helps me to step down, and then he, like, lets go, because, he saw that I walk quickly, and he was, like, a slow, older man. And, like, it's nice, it's cool, but, at the same, like, you don't have to touch me. And this sounds mean, it comes off sounding wrong, or that's how I feel anyway. Like, I feel bad for how it comes off sounding, but also think about how it is, like, on the blind or visually impaired person's, on just the cane user's part. Like, yes, you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart, but you're probably the 10th person that's doing it out of the kindness of your heart. In New York, like, 8 million people, in a city with 8 million people, like, let's say you offer the person help, and then, they say they're fine and you move away, then somebody else will come up and ask them if they need help, if they didn't hear you turn them down, One final thing, and I linked this below, I linked this in the description. I have a bunch of links that I thought was just interesting and fun. I also linked my blog, as I always do. I haven't posted anything in a couple of weeks, probably about a month. I get hung up on, like, the perfect wording and such, whereas with videos, like, I just sit here and ramble. But, just, like, check it out and go look, and if you have Google and a blogger account, like, add me to things and, help me up my page views and all that stuff like that. But anyway, so I was reading this thing, and this lady, it happened to me, and how, it was like, how I ruined a blind person's day or something like that. So she was one of those people, she was in a super good mood, this happened in New York City, she was in a super good mood, and she saw this like, blind man, and she decided to offer him assistance, and, so he's like, oh, he's like, I'm fine. And she's like, are you sure? And he was conceding. And he's like, okay, sure, you can help me. I'm like walking to the bus station. It's like half a block away. So as they're walking, she's just talking and like pouring out her life story. And this has happened to me too. Sometimes it's cool if it's an interesting life story, and other times I'm just like, I really don't care. Like, I don't care if your cousin's uncle's best friend's fiance is blind. What does that have to do with me? Yes, it sounds like a jerk, but it's how I feel. But so she was like going on and on about her life, like she just moved to the city. I think she wanted to be an actress or actor or something. And then the guy stops her and is like, ma'am, where are we? Have you passed the 68th Street? I think it was 68th Street bus stop. And she felt horrible because they were on like 65th, 75th. And, he was like, okay, well, can you take me to the nearest bus stop? So they keep walking, and she takes out her phone to ask Siri, but her phone's dead. So then she starts asking other passersby, and he gets upset, like, you taking past my stop, and then now you're asking other people. So then a little old lady, like, comes by and offers them help. And the guy, he's like, she's like, do you want me to walk you there? And the guy's like, you can help me. She's staying right here, to the initial person that was walking with him. I felt bad for both of them, like, the girl for, having, I know she felt bad for, like, taking him far out of his way. And also felt bad for the blind person for being taken far out of his way when he didn't want the help anyway. Like, he just conceded, because who knows if she would have been one of those people who kept on arguing and was like, are you sure you didn't need my help? I'd feel better if I helped you, yada, yada, yada. And, so he stopped and told her, like, I've been living in the city my whole life. I know where I'm going. If I need help, then I'll ask for it, and if I don't, well, I don't. Like, you wouldn't just walk up to someone and just start offering them assistance. Like, if they looked lost and were staring at a map, blah, 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 then you'd ask if they need help. Kind of like with a blind person. If they look lost, if they're standing in the middle of the street and they're about to get hit by a car, maybe you should offer some assistance, But if they're just walking steadily, like, and again, there's nothing wrong with asking, but also, just think about it. Like, how it comes off. And I've said this a lot in previous videos, and I mean it. Like, think about how it comes off. Just grabbing the person or assuming they need help, speaking in a condescending tone, like all of that stuff, like how it comes off to the blind person. All blind people are different. Everybody reacts differently. Some blind people have like a mental disability. Some people don't. Like, you can't generalize, kind of how you can't generalize with you sighteds, Thank you for, I have 49 subscribers as of last Saturday. I don't recall your name. I feel like it was like Allie or Allison with some numbers at the end. Thank you for the subscription. It drives me crazy with numbers like that. Like, I have 49. Like, I want the 50. But again, thanks. I haven't checked my blog page views in a while, but the last time I checked, I had 791. If 9 of you went, I'd have 800. That'd be amazing, guys. I'm sorry that this video, I'm sure it's longer than the last. It's like 40 minutes now, I bet. But I hope it was informative. I hope, like, all of my long videos, like, though I talk a lot, like, I genuinely hope that they help you and they are informative. Alright, till next time. Oh, the next video I'm going to do, I'm sorry, I bet people are like, finally, she's finished. But the next video I'm going to do is going to air more on the side of college things. It's going to be about academic apathy. It's going to, air more on the side of college rather than the blindness part. Wow, my tummy is growling aggressively. I'm going now. Till next time.